Good afternoon, everybody. We have some extremely exciting news today. This is a whole new podcast. So, Bellies, Babies, and Birth still exists. We had, I believe, 51 or 52 total episodes with that podcast, and it's been a really great run. The purpose of that was to build community amongst birth workers, especially in the Phoenix Valley, and provide resources and information to families around all things pregnancy, postpartum, babies, health, all those things. But I'm feeling called to some different things. And so welcome to Change the Conversations. Today will be our very first episode. I'm super excited to be launching that, especially with Melissa. We've been Facebook friends for quite a bit and trying to connect, and we've got kiddos and basketball and volleyball and trying to be sports moms and faith-based mamas without cussing, but that's not really real. And so I appreciate your candor, and I'm so excited that at least we're getting to finally have this conversation. We still need to meet in real life, but at least I can see you and we get to have this chat today. So excited to hear more about your podcast. And so welcome as the very first guest on Change the Conversations.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to connect with you. And I love that you were like honoring what you feel called to. I think that's really admirable because it's easy to just stay with what we've always done. And so good for you for answering that call and stepping out in faith.
Well, thank you. So Melissa Rohlfs is our guest today. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit more about you and kind of your passions and why and how we did connect in terms of ways that you're leading clients, and you have a podcast too. So I can't wait to hear all about it.
Okay, let's hope I don't miss anything because it's a summertime mom job right now.
I feel that pain. Hopefully I'll remember some key questions if you skip some stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I've got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. So I've entered the season of 2 teenagers as of last week, which is super bizarre, but we're, doing it. And I'm a holistic health and life coach, and I love to help women and teenage girls find freedom from the struggle with food. Because I think so many women, especially maybe even starting in teens, struggle with food. They don't know what to eat or how much to eat or when to eat. And we really haven't been taught to listen to our bodies. We've been taught to follow the masses and one size fits all. And I really despise that. So that's who I am and what I do. And I love living in Arizona. I'm originally from the Midwest, and it's funny because we were back a few weeks ago and everybody's like, it's so hot. I'm like, but it's a dry heat. You need to understand there's no humidity here. So
yeah, we joke about the dry heat, but it makes a huge difference. That it's a real thing. Yeah,
it
it's
is because here I don't step outside and my elbows don't sweat. But in the Midwest, I like step outside and I'm like a sweaty mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely agree with you there. Well, welcome to the mom of teenagerhood. The water is warm. And hopefully the ground not too insanely rocky. You have two, correct?
Boy and a girl. Girl is first, and then our son is the youngest.
Same. Yeah. Yeah, I've had to use the sentence that my daughter starts college next month. That sentence has come out of my mouth several times in the last 2 weeks, and I'm still a little shook, but we will carry on. She's not leaving town or going far away. She's going to GCC and living at home to start. So trying not to be dramatic about it. So let's dive into the food thing. I love that you recognize the need to start with teens and the fact that we don't have a lot of education or healthy messaging around this. So where do you like to start? There's a lot of talk about, my gosh, pick something, right? Paleo, keto, macros, carb cycling. Like there's so much going on right now. And when you Google any particular thing, the voices are loud and plentiful. So how do you like to start?
Contradictory, let's be honest. Like you can Google one thing and it says this and this says this, and then you're all confused because they oppose each other.
For sure. Like I even ran into that with just even some carb cycling stuff. So yeah, for sure. So where do you like to start? How do you keep it simple?
Yeah, so it's really about teaching those teen girls and women how to listen to their bodies, because I believe that you're your own best health expert. You know your body better than anybody else. And so it's really teaching people to like get quiet and learn how to connect to their bodies and listen to what their needs are and what's going on. Because as you just mentioned, Amy, there's like how many different ways of eating out there, and it's not one size fits all. Like, we're all very individual, we're unique, and I think we really dishonor that when we try to do what the masses are doing instead of look at how we're made and what works for us and our body type.
So teens obviously too struggle with so much of the messaging on social media. I mean, we all do, but and the food that's typically made available to them, especially if they eat lunch at school, I think it's also challenging to navigate that piece of, like, maybe they don't need to be super strict. And again, you don't want to educate to the point of paranoia or legalism with it, yet healthy approaches and mindset and, everyone's talking about self-love right now, which I think in the health arena can slightly backfire. Like, that doesn't, yes, self-love, and we need to love our bodies, and it's going to be really challenging to lose weight or gain health with, if there is that loathing and that hatred. And yet at the same time, we can't ignore the obesity epidemic that is still plaguing the country and our children and getting younger and younger and younger. And so I found that an interesting tightrope with discussing health, which I do all day, every day.
It is. And I think too, like, to add another piece of the puzzle is when you have athletes like you and I do, and we've talked about this,
Yeah.
like, that's another piece of the puzzle. And so I love to encourage, especially that age group, like, think of, especially if you are an athlete, think of your body as like performance, right? Like, you want it to perform at its best. You're not going to put diesel fuel in a Lamborghini. I don't think you would anyway, but you're not going to put, like, you need to fuel your body with what's going to help it perform well, that's going to give you energy, that's going to make you feel good so you can be your best. And so I think if we can help them have that mindset and that attitude towards fuel as helping me to feel good, helping my body to be strong with the immune system and my mental clarity and my energy, and really having the conversation that it's not just about weight, because I think so many people have the correlation with food and weight, and we don't realize it's so much more than that.
That's an amazing and necessary point, that it's that connection and relationship with food and our bodies and our health has very little to do, not very little to do, it has to do with the scale and that number and the weight, but that it's so much more, and getting to a healthy place with it can't be about that. Whether you're underweight, overweight, fine with your weight, but needing strength, like whatever the particular health, or maybe it's not even about the weight, it's about struggling with autoimmune. A lot of our moms, after babies and breastfeeding pulls nutrients from the body, and just some different switches get flipped. And so it's not even about necessarily the scale or how they look. It's the fact that they've got gut health challenges and what's going on in our gut and how that affects our nutrient absorption and all of that. Do you bring gut health into it with everything?
Not necessarily with everything. It's more about, how do foods make you feel? I have this one session, I love it, and it's all about like, what foods work for you, because we don't know how to like slow down and assess how food makes us feel. So it's really kind of bringing awareness of, how do foods affect me? I have a client, I just got off the phone with her before I talked to you, and she even said, I'm going to look at her quote, because she said, I am finding that being gluten free is really working for me. I didn't tell her to go gluten free, didn't suggest it, like it was not a thing, but she wanted to dip her toe in it and has learned that when I eat gluten, I feel this way. I don't like feeling that way. So she's weaned herself off of it because of how she's felt. So it's really about helping them understand, how do foods make me feel? What energizes me? What makes me feel good? And as you know, when your gut is healthy, you are going to have energy and you are giving your body what it needs. It's going to perform better. You're going to feel better. And all of that piece is a piece of the puzzle, but not necessarily something I dive deep into.
Well, and we have that. Yeah, that's great. We have a lot of clients ask us about different supplements, and we do have a naturopath here. So that sometimes helps, like if there's a need in blood work and those kinds of things. And obviously the supplement industry has blown up and gone gangbusters. And of course we all want to quick answers, right? How do you address that when clients are asking about, it's like, again, it's a balance of recognizing that our food quality has taken a massive nosedive, and that the nutrients you used to get from a cup of spinach versus the nutrients you get even from an organic cup of spinach now, not the same as it was 20 years ago. And so how do you bring that awareness piece into it with the possible need to supplement, or just trying to really educate people about the purity of whole foods and making sure they're eating real food and not processed food?
Again, it goes back to them and how do these things make you feel? And it's amazing because once they start to make that connection, Amy, it's like, okay, so I noticed that I have this supplement in the morning and by, this time of day I'm dragging. So I tried, it's really helping them experiment with themselves because I think when we approach it with curiosity rather than judgment, or I have to, I need to, I should, it just brings a different perspective. And when you're curious, I think you're more willing to try things, you're willing to see what works. And so it's amazing because they're having the aha on their own. I'm not telling them what to do. So it's their idea. There's ownership. They're excited and they try it. And then they realize, okay, maybe I need a little bit more, electrolytes in the afternoon, or maybe I need this, or maybe I need that. So that's kind of my approach.
Yeah, definitely one of the most successful coaches I worked with was because I just wanted to know the most efficient. We were messing with some intermittent fasting and a little bit of keto, and I just wanted the right, most efficient way to eat. Like if I'm going to be disciplined, I'll do it, but I was finding myself hung up on like, well, if I'm taking this, am I even absorbing it at that time? Because, blah, 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 right? You can just spin for decades. But he brought it back to the awareness piece too, which ironically is exactly why we started the yoga studio. Was, very little in our world helps us to slow down, helps us to have increased awareness and pay attention to what's really going on with ourselves. And you're 100% right, I believe, that that's really where you're going to get the most answers. But he's like, your stress about whether or not you eat, I'll choose this as an example. I don't actually, cake's not a weakness of mine, but he's like, your stress about whether or not you eat the cake is causing more harm to your overall health than whether you eat the cake. And I think just, again, the awareness, how are you feeling? How do you want to feel? Even slowing down to take the time to ask ourselves, what do you want to feel? What is it you want to be able to do? What do you find to be the most successful route for your clients in terms of tracking any of that? Whether it's feelings, whether it's what they're eating, whether it's supplements, how are you encouraging people to take a look at that?
I think part of it happens in the coaching session because the women I work with, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed. And for me to say, okay, you need to track things, that just kind of sends them over the edge because they're like, I can't do one more thing. So I think it's really in the session, it's like, tell me what went well. And it gives them an opportunity to reflect on, okay, this is what went well this week. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that I had done that. And so that's really powerful. And then we always close the session with, what ahas or insights do you have? And they're like, oh, okay, we talked about this happened, and they're able to connect those dots, which I think is powerful. And then if they choose to take it a step further, I'm a big proponent of, get things out, whether you're journaling, whether you're typing, whether you're recording an audio, a video, but just get it out so that it's not in your brain, it's not taking up space, and you have the ability to work through and process through what you need to instead of holding it in here and being a hot mess.
Well, and we can't really take a look at it when it's in here. We're just thinking and we're spinning, and whether, whatever personality styles, if I get under stress, I become an introverted feeler.
Huh?
So not only am I all in my feels and in my head and yeah. So it's really hard to gain clarity when we're just spinning in our own thoughts. Yeah. 100%. I 100%, I say that phrase all the time with our clients. I'm like, we should on ourselves enough that I don't want to give them. We discuss that, especially around home program. It's like, you're already overwhelmed. You already have no time for yourself. You're already not exercising. Me sending you home with these 8 things to do, not likely to be successful. And so we just talk about like, how can I help you not should on yourself, yet make some positive changes, take some time for yourself, do the things you need to do so that your coming here isn't just a waste. And so kind of along that thought process, I don't know, without tracking, I don't think I would have a realistic perspective of what I'm actually doing, because we think things in our minds and we have our own stories and rationalizations. So you're saying most of the ahas and the most of the processing through that is what you do in your coaching sessions.
100%. And then it's cool because it carries into the week. And so they're like, oh, yeah, remember what we talked about last week? I applied that this week. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's exactly how this is supposed to work.
You're like, amazing. You tried something
Uh-huh.
different and it changed. Um, Very cool. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
It's called Mondays with Melissa, and it is a hodgepodge. I'll just be completely honest. It's motherhood, faith, life, health. I mean, I don't know. It's not very niche. And, in this industry, they're like, you need to have a niche. That is like the one piece that's just like kind of a free for all. I started it during COVID actually because I found myself, like most of us, sitting home and just like, what can I do with myself? I joined some podcast groups on Facebook, started being a guest on podcasts. I really liked that. And I'm like, okay, I'm having fun connecting with people, but I kind of want to talk about what I want to talk about. And I don't know how to edit anything. So I'm just going to make a podcast and just talk. So that's what it is.
That's
There
awesome.
you go.
Well, and they've asked me before. It's so funny. I guess when I started listening to podcasts, I must have started listening to things that were mostly interviews, because I honestly, I don't feel like it was exactly a conscious choice that I'm like, oh, I'm only going to do interviews. I think I just thought that's how it worked.
Okay.
It's funny, as I thought about that not that long ago, and I might do some solo podcasts. But must have, whatever ones I liked the most or listened to the most must have been interview format. And I just thought that's what you did. And I mean, that fit for me because my big part of it was building community of birth workers and providers and resources specific to Phoenix. So that worked for me and fit for me. But there are definitely topics that don't necessarily require that. So I love this, just kind of your Monday musings with Melissa, even, and that you kind of cover whatever's on your heart that day. Have you always been a person of faith?
Well, that's a hard question because I would say yes, but no. So I grew up going to church. We grew up Catholic. So what we did in our family, Amy, is we would go to communion. We'd go to Saturday night mass, and then we'd go up for communion, and then we'd just leave after communion because my parents had dinner plans. So that was kind of what I grew up with. It was very, we went to church. It was very moral. I was always a good girl. And then I went to college at Purdue University and went through sorority rush, joined my house, and there were some girls who were in this. We had a sleepover at the house, and there were some girls, and they had to get up early the next day to go to a conference. And I'm like, well, I want to go with them. I had no idea what it was. And there was a cute boy going. So I went, and it was Greek InterVarsity, which is InterVarsity Christian Fellowships Ministry to fraternity and sorority students. So went to the conference, heard about a relationship with Jesus at that weekend, and said yes. And so I think that's really when my faith journey began. I had a foundation, but it wasn't personal. It wasn't my own until then. So college, sorority, who would have guessed?
Yeah, that's not where I thought that story was going for a minute. I was like, oh, this is going to get interesting, which it's still very interesting, but that's not where I thought that was going for a minute. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you hear about Fellowship of Christian Athletes or some of the different organizations. So I think everybody, regardless of how you grew up, whatever point, if there's someone of faith or there's someone that subscribes to a particular religion or group, I feel like there always hits that critical point somewhere between 16 and 30 that you have to make a decision as an adult and choose it for yourself. I mean, I shouldn't have even said 30. It can happen anytime in life. But yeah, there's a point at which you have to choose it, make it your own, figure out what your relationship with God or whoever you worship is going to look like. And for me, it's definitely ever evolving, and different things that I'm learning and that he's saying, and different phases of how much I'm listening, for sure. So yeah, I can
Different seasons
appreciate
of
that.
life. I mean, because you're about to go into a new season.
Yeah, it changes for sure. And different things that pull you back to a recognition for needing that listening time. It's kind of the same as that inner awareness and the stilling our minds. And yeah, there's definitely a core chunk of songs that got me through all the craziness of getting into this building. And now we're coming up on our 3-year anniversary. So yeah, it's a little crazy. It's exciting. All right, another thing I definitely wanted to ask you about, let's go back to the teenagers. Peer pressure is a big deal. You don't necessarily want to create so much hyper awareness that then they tend to, like, I feel like that era for teens can lend itself to extremism.
Yeah.
Like, again, everybody wants to belong, and so maybe you rebuke the fast food crowd and like what your friends are doing and end up with some sort of over healthy. How do you kind of coach them to balance, like, as a teenager, especially without any other health concerns, it's not going to kill you to go to Chick-fil-A today, yet let's make sure you get some veggies with dinner, or whatever. Like, what's some of the messaging you find to be most successful with teens? Because I know we have tons of moms who listen and they're going to want that info.
Yeah, it's all about balance, right? Like, I think it's exactly what you said. Like, that's great. Go to Chick-fil-A, have that. Just make sure you're balancing it with something healthy. In fact, before we got on this call, my son was like, "Can I have a cookie?" I'm like, "You may have a cookie, but I want you to have a banana first because you haven't had any fruit yet. So have some fruit, then have the cookie." So I think it's all about like not having foods be good or bad, off limits, but it's about that balance. And if you're going to have something that, maybe you normally wouldn't have, make sure that you're having it with something that you normally would have, that's good for you, that's going to energize you, nourish you, just so they're learning like how food makes them feel and how it affects them.
Yeah, I definitely, it's funny. My son, he's 15 now, and he's old enough that he knows certain things are kind of non-negotiable. But because he's 15 and my daughter's almost 18, they do have a lot of independence at home. If my husband's on shift or I'm at work or whatever, it's not like we send them to Grammys or have a babysitter per se. But I come home and they know I'm probably going to bring up, "So what'd you guys eat today? Did you eat today?" Like, and he's aware. I was actually really proud of him because they've been doing some volleyball stuff at school, and he had a 4-hour, they don't exercise that whole time and they do have a break to eat, but he packed food to take with him. Some good choices. But he'll negotiate with me, and he's gotten to where sometimes if we're having a vegetable he really doesn't want to eat a serving of, I don't know that it's a mistake because he's getting good variety, but I had one point negotiated, like, "All right, if you're not going to eat that, then you have to have a scoop of greens powder." And he will often now just say, "Can I just have the greens powder?" Like, he doesn't even want to eat the 5 chunks of broccoli on his plate. And sometimes I'll say, "No, you have to do a little, like, okay, we'll swap 3 of your chunks of broccoli for a scoop of greens powder. We still have to have 2 of your chunks of broccoli," or whatever, right? Like, I'm like, is this the life? This is the conversation I'm having with my 15-year-old. But anyway.
One thing I think that helps too, we have found, is that letting them have some say in like the food choices. And I don't know if you know about this, but there's this amazing resource called Farmbox. Do you know about Farmbox?
I don't know. Keep
Oh my
going.
gosh, Amy, you have to know about Farmbox. So it's all local to Arizona, fruits, vegetables, eggs, and they will bring it to your door. They'll do every week, every other week. You can customize what you want. You can do half fruits, half veggies. So we tried it a year ago because I'm like, you know what? We need some variety. I tend to like go to the store, get the same things. And I thought if we have this box coming to us, I'm not going to want to waste it. So it'll force us to try some new recipes. So we've tried things like broccolini, we've tried red cabbage, the kids have tried asparagus, and now they're like asking for those things. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. So I think like trying new things and giving them some say and like, what kind of vegetables do you want? That can be really powerful. And I love Farmbox for that.
Yeah, that's a good, so it's just fruits and veggies and eggs.
Yeah.
Have you heard of, I was just going to look it up. I think it's a Garcia family, but it's everybody's, the Facebook page is everybody's, here we go, Everybody's Family Fruit. And
I
it's
know what
right
you're
down
talking about.
here. at
Yes.
Cactus, like behind Shooter's World,
Yes.
like a couple streets up, but in that same industrial complex.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen posts from them. I don't know, stupid algorithm. No, they've got a ton of blueberries. You can get a case of the 18-ounce. So sometimes I think families have to share, or like fruit's great because we'll throw it in the freezer because my kids will make smoothies.
Yep.
They've got smoking deals. One case for $10 of
Mhm.
8 of those
Yeah.
18-ounce containers. Those are the big ones, guys. Usually the
Mhm.
little ones are the 6-ounce. And so I think they're a really great resource too. Sometimes they have a much bigger variety. Sometimes you can get a box of mixed stuff from them too. So I'll include Farmbox and that Everybody's Family Fruit in our show notes. That's why if you see me looking down, I'm taking some notes.
You're good.
So yeah, I will post that too, because that's a really great resource to know about. And yeah, Trevor, he's in culinary, and that sometimes I can get him to look up recipes and try to like
Mhm.
motivate him in that way. We bought tomatillos because he'd made something at school, but they sat in the fruit bowl. I think they might still be there. I don't know how long tomatillos last. Anyway, but it's worth a shot. Um, for all we mostly have a female demographic. For anyone who might be listening who knows they don't maybe have the best relationship with food, what are some of your favorite starting points that you'd want to leave them with?
Yeah, I think the big one is replacing judgment with curiosity, because I think it's so easy for us, Amy, to be like, okay, I don't have a great relationship with food. That was very much my journey. I was addicted to sugar when I was overwhelmed, stressed, fill in the blank. I was like in the pantry eating the Oreos, in the freezer eating the ice cream. Like sugar made me feel better. I didn't know how to handle otherwise. Like it started in childhood and carried through. And so I think replacing judgment with curiosity is powerful, because you can stop after you've eaten the whole sleeve of Oreos and you can say, what did I just do? Why did I do that? Instead of the other voice that I think we tend to with, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I already ate half a sleeve. I'll just finish the whole sleeve. This is terrible. My day is shot. I'm such a loser. Like that self talk, we can just
Mm-hmm.
really spiral in. And so if you can just step back and ask why. Why did I do that? What am I looking for? That can be really powerful, because it can help you realize, you know what? I don't need the Oreos. I don't need the ice cream. I really need time to myself. I need more time with friends. I need more space, whatever that is. And then you can meet that need with what you really need, instead of going towards the food or the sugar or whatever the vice is. Some people, it's wine, scrolling, shopping, you name it, it's there. So I think that's powerful. I think too, the other thing is a lot of times we make choices because we are overwhelmed. And so a great technique to kind of calm your nervous system down is the 5-5-7 breath, where you breathe in for 5 seconds, you hold it for 5 seconds, and then you exhale for 7 seconds. And that kind of syncs the body and the brain up and helps everything to kind of calm down. And I think when you're in a calm place, you can make better choices and you're not frazzled and like chaotic and looking like a tornado.
Yeah, for sure. The breathing's great. Do you ever teach your clients any tapping?
A little bit, depending on if they're open to it, if the need is there, but it's a
Yeah.
great tool.
It just can be a quick shift out, just like the breathing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very. I think so many of us look at things like that, almost dismiss it because it seems too simple and too easy. Like, how could that possibly make a big enough difference? But literally, like 10 deep breaths can shift so much. It's like a superpower nobody's using.
Totally. Or we do what I did and I judge it. And I was like, that's crazy. That won't work. That's woo. And I was so quick to judge it instead of actually trying it and realize, oh my gosh, this is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. God forbid we just try it before we make all these
Right?
decisions. Yeah. I think that's actually part of the heart around change the conversations is whatever and however we're doing it. I think one thing most of us would agree on, it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not really shifting for the better in a lot of arenas. Pick a category.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to shift how we talk and what we talk about and why we talk about it and how we think and how we share and all of those things to try to get into a different place about it. And I mean, food is so fundamental to gathering, to family time, to I think it's definitely one of the ways the enemy is eroded so much by we're just busy, 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 and people don't have time to make dinner at home, and they don't have time to sit down together and eat, and they don't gather around a table. Everybody's darting in and out of the kitchen and eating standing up. And I mean, just so many of the things that I know are happening in my house. And the power behind breaking bread and sharing a meal. So like on top of all the amazing lessons you've shared and all the mindset around food, and of course awareness, like why am I eating this? What is it I actually need right now? And sort of shifting some of that, just the power in the shared experience of a meal and cooking together and eating together, might be changing what we have for dinner tonight. What are your thoughts on food prep?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the hard thing too with food is that we need it to live. It's not like, alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or other addictions that people can have. Like, we need food to live, so it's necessary. And so how do we shift the conversation around that so that we're focused on, you have all of these holidays that revolve around like food that's not nourishing to us. We have National Donut Day and National Cookie Day and National Ice Cream Day. Where's like National Pear Day? I mean,
I'll bet you there is one, just nobody makes a thing out of it.
right? Or it's not in our country, maybe. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, it's true. Or yeah, I mean, gosh, like any given day is like National Awareness for Something Day. And they're adding more all the time. What are your thoughts, or how have you implemented or not for whatever reasons? What are your thoughts on meal prep and kind of
I
meal
love meal prep.
planning? Huh?
I love it. I think if you are like us and you're in a season of life where you have kids that are in activities, you need it. Otherwise, you are like at the drive-through more than you want to be because you just don't know what you're having. And so, one thing that works really well for us before we had kids, this is kind of interesting. I used to plan out like a full month full of meals. And then I'm like, wait, that's just way too much. So, after having kids and doing activities, I now do like Sundays, I'll look at the week ahead. What practices do we have? What games do we have? Does that need to be a crock pot night? Like, it helps me gauge what my bandwidth is going to be for cooking. And so I can kind of plan around that. And that seems to work really well because then you can buy what you need, you have it on hand. You're not like trying to make a recipe and you don't have the ingredients because that's the pits. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it helps people like know that they can have a meal together at their house and that they can enjoy that nourishing meal around the table.
Definitely. And I know I used to tell myself that lie of like, well, I don't even have time to meal plan. And it's like the time and energy it saves you, that mental suck, whatever part of the day it happens for you, where you're like, oh, what am I making for dinner? What are we having? And the kids are like, what are we eating? And it avoids all of that. And like you said, avoids more expense eating out, avoids, there's not a lot of healthy choices to eat out, that's for sure. And so although that's improving, so yeah, I 100% agree. I think we tend to make batches of like grass-fed ground beef and like chicken. So unfortunately that does end up leading to like my kids a lot of night will eat, like we eat a lot of the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least it's not the drain that it could be. Yeah, big fan of meal planning too. To get a calendar, however it works for you. Do you have any secret tips on that?
I just think it saves stress. I think that it saves the added stress and the pressure. Where if you know what you're having that day, you can know if you need to thaw meat or if you, I don't know. I just think it really saves some stress. So I don't know, I'm visual. So I put ours on like, have this magnetic calendar on the fridge where I kind of plan out the day. I plan out what the food is, and I just it makes me have to think less because I'm like, okay, I need to get that out of the freezer, or oh, we're gonna do breakfast. I need to make sure that we have that in time. I mean, it just saves my brain.
Yeah, for sure. My mind hijacked onto something about dinner, and then I forgot what I was just about to ask you about that.
You're
Um,
fine.
what are some of your favorite crock pot? Or have
Oh
you
gosh.
become an Instapot junkie?
No, I had one and I didn't like it, so I sold it.
What about the air fryer?
Okay, we had one before we moved here and I loved it. Made the best kale chips in it. And then our house here has one built into the oven and I haven't taken the time to figure out how to use it. So no.
You have an air fryer built into your oven?
Yes, but I don't know how to work it. That's the issue. So maybe I should learn. I have the manual out. I just need to do a little time with it.
So I feel like I'm pretty late to the air fryer game. We just got one. It was actually a little bit of a joke, serious. So like Trevor started culinary and he's been cooking and doing some things, and I got him one. It was so last minute that I thought of this idea that I was like, asked a couple friends I knew that had them. I just ran down to Costco. I think it was the day before his birthday, and grabbed. I got to Costco. I didn't expect to have 3 options. And so I'm calling one of my friends and I'm like, what am I looking for? What matters? Like, what's happening right now? I ended up getting, it was on sale, but it was their dual. So it's got 2 sides and 2 pretty big, I think, based on other air fryers I've since looked at, little compartments. And you can set them both to the same thing with the touch of a button. Or if you wanted to do one night, I'm still a little flabbergasted this happened. We did steak on one side and green beans on the other side. You can bake, air fry, or what's the other setting? Roast, maybe? And like you can air fry on one side and roast on the other. Like I've been blown away. I find it far more intuitive and user friendly than the Instapot. We use the Instapot. It is not my friend. It took me almost a year to figure out how to easily get the lid on correctly. I
Same.
don't like the settings. You don't, there's not a freaking on button.
I know. I
And
know.
like the
And then
whole
how are you
ramp
supposed to know
up,
if it's working?
of the pressure, I'm not sure how long it cooks. Like I don't like anything about it. We do hard-boiled eggs in it that turn out well. We do chicken in it for shredded chicken that turns out well, but I'm not in love. Like people rave about their Instapot and I'm like, I don't, I still don't know that I turn it on successfully on a regular basis. My husband uses it well. Um, so anyway, my daughter's like, did you leave the salmon out for dinner? So I think the air fryer, we actually did salmon in it one night and we botched that from here to Kingdom Comes. We hadn't thought it all the way and we thought it was thought all the way. And then we're like, can you even put frozen things in the air fryer?
Right.
Looking through the little booklet, and then it was like, you can't. And my husband had already done oil and seasonings on both sides. And then we're like, you can, but it's like, do it for this amount of time to thaw it, then put your seasonings. And we're like, well, too late. And we just winged it and it was amazing.
Good. Good.
Some veggies turn out chewy. I have discovered that. Some veggies turn out chewy. But yeah, we've done steak in there. That turned out like grilled. I mean, I'm just blown away by it. I'm a big fan. Big
I
fan.
need to read my manual now.
Yeah, I've never heard of or seen one built into your oven. That's really remarkable. That's pretty cool. Any last parting food related, health related, mindset related things that you want to give our listeners?
I just want people to know that like they matter and they're worth taking care of. Because I think what happens is that we get so busy and we get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and we just don't think. And then, a few years down the road, we have these health issues that could have possibly been prevented, avoided, maybe gone a different route if we had slowed down and been a little bit more intentional with where we were. So I just want people, like, I think when you know and you believe that you matter and you're worth taking care of, you show up different, you treat yourself different, you just are different.
Yeah, it's got to start there. And like you said, everyone's going to be eating every day.
Mm-hmm.
What they eat, how often they eat, all of those other details can vary hugely, but everyone eats every day. And I do think a big part of, especially trying to make healthier changes, if you don't feel that you matter and that it's worth the time and energy, it's going to make it feel like even more of a struggle than it needs to. And so I 100% agree with that. Do you ever recommend that clients, like, do you usually even bother starting with goals, or like, what do you like to have them have as a starting point?
Yeah, it's always goals, Amy, because it's not just like, oh, we want to look good for my class reunion. Okay, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you want that. But what do you really want that for? Like, why is that important to you? Because I think we set these arbitrary goals and the event comes, and then we're like, okay, I did that. So now I'll just like go back and we haven't changed anything. And so
Right.
it's like, let's dig deep. Let's figure out what you really want, why this matters to you. Let's set some anchors in your environment so that when we're not working together, they kind of serve as a way to keep you on track. They can be a pattern interrupt if you're making a choice that's not in agreement with your goals. And it kind of teaches you how to be independent and how to like go forward based on what you want instead of just doing what you've always done.
Yeah, the ruts, right? The autopilot factor. I have a tip I give clients a lot, and maybe you can tell me if you agree with it, or maybe you have a better one. Again, so many of the moms come in and they're already overwhelmed and they're already stressed out and they're already feeling like they're blowing it in 1 to 12 areas of life. And so trying to, go gluten or dairy free, or trying to go keto or something, especially I think too, if they've got kids that aren't infants, that are also needing to be fed real food, it's so exhausting to think about, well, I'm just going to eat what the kids eat, or to eat healthier things than you're feeding your kids creates guilt. And yet you get sick of fighting with them, like all those factors, right? And so I often tell clients that are trying to make some healthy changes, I'm like, rather than worrying about cutting out something, because we always have this painful association with dieting, right? I try not to use that word. It's like, well, the eating plan I'm doing right now, or the way I'm eating is blah, blah, blah. But I just tell them to add something good, often like the greens powder, like just add more water, or add liquid IV, or add something positive, rather than cutting sugar or that deprivation mode, right? Like last thing moms, we do a lot we work with lip and tongue tie babies and colicky babies, and work with the babies' necks and tummies and stuff. And the moms are so quick to feel like they have to cut dairy or stop their coffee or not have coffee or whatever. And I'm like, I will try everything else first before I tell the mom to stop her coffee. Like, oh my gosh, I just can't do it. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that strategy of basically adding something good rather than cutting something out?
For sure, because eventually, Amy, like anytime you take something away, it creates a vacuum, right? So when we have that vacuum, we want to fill it. So I think eventually you can just like add so much good that you're crowding out the bad, and that accomplishes the same purpose, but there's no like deprivation, there's no, oh, I can't have that. Like that just eliminates that. So I think it's a great strategy.
Yeah, or even just a
Easier to
lot of
add in
women.
than to take out.
Yeah, a lot of women. Can be a scotch controversial. I feel like there's enough science it shouldn't be at this point, but um women not getting nearly enough protein. And I mean
Protein.
by like they're getting maybe 30 to 50% of what they should.
Mhm.
And so that's another great crowder. That's what made me think of it when you said if you put in some of the good stuff, it'll crowd out. Protein's filling. Protein will curb your appetite and give you a more steady burning fuel. Protein keeps muscle, which women have to battle for, especially after their 30s.
Oh, as they age.
Yeah. I've been doing my little carb cycling journey. I don't think I've posted any videos this week, but um part of it is like just the awareness that, would I like less of a muffin top? Sure. Would I like a slightly flatter midsection? Sure. Um, I'm not willing to lose muscle to get it. If I have to cut my nutrition, so because I was super lean when I was doing keto and intermittent fasting, but my energy started to tank. And I think that can be done successfully. I don't think I was using the awareness enough to time my days and workouts well. And so, yeah, awareness is 100% the best possible superpower. And yeah, just add good stuff in, guys. Well, please tell our listeners where they can get in touch with you. They might be interested in coaching or interested in listening to your podcast or other resources you have. So please, anything, website, Facebook pages, groups, whatever you've got, share away.
Sure, I'll tell you, I've got my Facebook page. My web page is the best place because it's got all of that stuff on there, all my social channels. It's free, the number 2, the letter B, coaching.com. So freetobecoaching.com. And then I do have a Facebook group that is called Finding Freedom from the Food Struggle as well, that people can join. That's not on the web page.
Finding freedom from the food struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right?
Yes, I can send you a link if that would help. Kind of a mouthful.
I think, I mean, that might help just in case I don't find it right, or like you have to be added or whatever. But is that a private group for people that are like in your world? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, send me the link and we'll make sure, and people that want to get in touch with you or learn from you or get some resources. It's great. You've got several different options. And the name of your podcast with Mondays with Melissa?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that on all regular platforms?
I think so. It might not be on Apple, but I think it's everywhere else.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll link all of that stuff for you guys in the show notes, and please feel free to write in with any of your questions or get in touch with Melissa. You know, there's that saying, pay now or pay later when it comes to what we eat and the choices we make. And again, I think that's one of those things that sometimes people overlook. Not that eating well is simple these days, but it's a lot simpler than it's made out to be. And the impact to our health is a lot simpler, even like you said, without going down the rabbit hole of supplements and gut health, just some basics, like basic proteins, basic nutrients, basic replenish what we deplete, especially athletes or exercise. There's so much of our health that can be positively improved. And especially if you do it the way Melissa does it, with a positive mindset, with that self-love, with that positive focus moving forward, that I think is so critical and often lacking. And I just don't think we're meant to go any of this alone, you guys. So whatever resources you choose, there's no end of them out there. But please get a community around nutrition and around exercise and around health. And that's one thing I have been talking about, the carb cycling journey. Like, it's ludicrous the amount of info. And I started with a particular article that focused on around the menstrual cycle. So at the end of the day, though, you have to just kind of make a decision and get started. And you can't just keep hemming and hawing, waiting for the right plan for you or the right information. Just get started, make one positive change, and see where it takes you. Thanks for listening. Again, this is the very first episode of Change the Conversations. Really excited about the direction of that, and we'll be sharing more and more with you guys about that. So stay tuned, share it out, listen, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much, guys.